In the 1988-89 team photo of Partizan Belgrade, a mix of local players from places like Kragujevac, Priboj, and Novi Pazar stand together. Among them, though, are two men who hail from much farther away, Jia Shuquan from Dalian and Liu Haiguang from Shanghai. Already halfway through their adventure in Yugoslavia, these two Chinese football stars would go on to play a combined 57 matches for Partizan. Before 1987, no player from mainland China had ever featured in a professional European football league. The first was Shi Yuxin, who moved to Dutch club PEC Zwolle 82 on a training contract after being scouted during a youth match. Gu Guangming, another Chinese player, was already in Germany at the time, though he wouldn't sign for SV Darmstadt 98 until later that year, following a leg injury. Unlike Z, who was at the start of his career, and Gu, who was recovering from an injury, Jia and Liu arrived in Europe as well-established players. Jia, a centre-back from Dalian, had captained the national team and was named the most valuable player of the 1984 Asian Cup. Liu, a striker from Shanghai, had also been a part of that tournament. Partizan Belgrade's decision to sign Jia and Liu was groundbreaking. They became the club's first non-European-born players and the first foreigners since the 1940s. Although there was no transfer fee involved, the move was part of a cultural exchange between China and Yugoslavia. Partizan, who were in a fierce rivalry with Red Star Belgrade for the 1988-89 Yugoslav First League title, were cautious. They wanted to be sure the two Chinese players could contribute on the field. Partizan scouts had an opportunity to evaluate the duo during the 1988 Asian Cup qualifiers, which took place in the UAE. Jia led China's defense, which conceded just one goal in 5 matches, while Liu scored 3 goals at the other end. Impressed by their performances, Partizan signed both players. The pair left Beijing for Belgrade on February 29, 1988, a leap year date. Integrating into one of the top teams in Yugoslavia halfway through the season was no easy task. Jia and Liu had to adjust not only to the high level of football, but also to the cultural and linguistic differences. Jia, for example, went from organizing his defense in Mandarin to receiving instructions in a completely new language. The lack of Mandarin speakers in Belgrade meant the duo often visited the Chinese embassy just to converse with fellow countrymen. Despite these challenges, Jia adapted quickly, playing 16 league matches between March and December 1988. Liu, while only featuring in 6 league matches, made his mark with 3 goals. His goal-scoring record in friendlies was even more impressive, 15 goals in 12 games, and one of his league goals became the fastest in Yugoslavian league history, coming just 45 seconds into the match. The environment at Partizan was also a new experience for the Chinese pair. While the multi-purpose stadiums in China may have felt familiar, the intensity of the crowds, particularly the flares and noise at the JNA Stadium, was unlike anything they had encountered before. The season ended with Partizan finishing second in the league, just 1 point behind Red Star, and Jia and Liu were rewarded with contract extensions. A clause in their contracts allowed them to return to the Chinese national team for the 1988 Seoul Olympics, China's first appearance in the tournament. In September 1988, they flew to Seoul, where they joined their Partizan teammates Predrag Spacek, Dragoljub Brunovic, and Vladislav Dukic, who were part of the Yugoslav squad. However, neither China nor Yugoslavia advanced past the group stage. Exactly a year after Liu scored in a 2-0 victory against Japan to help China qualify for the Olympics, Jia made history by becoming the first Chinese player to compete in a European continental competition. He came off the bench in a UEFA Cup match against Roma, a game that Partizan won 4-2. Unfortunately, neither Jia nor Liu played in the return leg in Italy, where Roma won 2-0 and advanced on away goals. The 1988-89 season did not go as well for Partizan, with the team finishing 6th in the league. However, they did win the Yugoslav Cup, though Jia and Liu missed the final as they had returned to China by then. In fact, while Partizan won the cup by thrashing Velez Mostar 6-1, Jia and Liu were playing in a 2-2 friendly match against Japan. Though they were allowed to go back to China in early 1989, Partizan had valued their contributions. In December 1988, the club refused to release them for the Asian Cup, prioritizing domestic competition. This decision, and the club-before-country mentality, may explain why their success didn't lead to an influx of Chinese players in European leagues at the time. Jia Shuquan and Liu Haiguang's stint in Belgrade wasn't the end of the footballing connection between China and Yugoslavia, or its successor states. In the years that followed, players and managers from the former Yugoslav republics became common in Chinese football, with some even making significant contributions. Former Partizan player Bora Milutinovic famously led China to their first ever World Cup in 2002, and several Yugoslav coaches had a near monopoly on Chinese league titles between 1999 and 2008. Although Jia and Liu never played in the fierce Belgrade derby against Red Star, their careers crossed paths with one of Red Star's most famous players nearly 30 years later. In 2016, Jia, then managing Henan Jianye, faced off against Dragan Stojkovic, who was coaching Guangzhou R and F in a Chinese Super League match. While it may be overly romantic to connect the later influx of Yugoslav players and managers in China entirely to what happened in 1988, it's undeniable that Jia Shuquan and Liu Haiguang's time at Partizan marked an important moment in football history. Their journey from China to Yugoslavia is a testament to the unexpected paths football can take.